Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Max Revenue Show. This is Mike Casales. I am your host, and today is going to be part 3 of our series, Diary of a New Producer. This is the series where I give you a behind the curtain look into a new producer and what they're going through, the good things, the bad things, and how I am mentoring this new producer to hopefully achieve success as fast as possible. So, this is the start of week number 3. We had our call, and if you've watched our previous 2 episodes, you know kind of how this goes. Basically, I'm just sharing with you guys what we talk about in the call and what we're facing, right? So this week we talked about everything from last week's results to Imposter Syndrome to wholesalers. So I'm going to get into all that here. So stay tuned. All right. So first, like I said, we're in week 3. I think it's a good idea to always do a recap of the previous week, right? What went well, what didn't go well, and just look at the actual numbers. So looking at the actual number side of things and statistics, a great week, 174 calls made. So our goal again is about 200 a week. However, you don't need to be, just riding people's behinds on this one. I mean, if they're close to the 200, that's fine. So 174, I'm very happy with that. Again, we're not trying to micromanage this person, or as a new producer, don't beat yourself up if you fall just short. I think if you're getting around that 200, you're going to have success. So 175 calls were made. There was 2 meetings set, which again was awesome. There was 8 conversations had, 5 follow-up laters. Again, we talked about the importance of that follow-up later list. What are the things that we talked about on that follow-up later list with this new producer is, and his name is Ian Cognito, I guess that's what we're calling him, is he would forget, right? He's like, oh, I forgot at the end of the week. So I said, hey, as you're going through your week, just print out in the beginning of the week the hot list and your follow-up later list, and then handwrite on there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, handwrite the new people that say, hey, follow up later, call me back, or that you set a meeting with. Write those companies on there right as you do them. At the end of the week, update Excel, and then print it for the next week. That's what I told him. I think there's just something about writing things down that can be really, really helpful. So I think that will help him. So that was the weekly statistics, right? And then we talked about 2 meetings he had the previous week. One thing I think was interesting to talk about there is he really talked about the benefits of using the first meeting script that we here at the Max Revenue Show have put together. It's if you subscribe to our course, the Producer Playbook, we give away the script in there. I highly recommend using it. And his words, almost verbatim, were like, hey, the script was awesome. It just really helps make it easy and flow natural for the first meeting. There was a funny moment too where he got done explaining the due diligence game, or the insurance game and due diligence, and the buyer said to him, like, hey, how do you ever get new business? And he said, I laughed to myself, and I laughed when he was telling me this because I put that in the script because in parentheses I said, hey, your buyer will ask you, well, how do you get new business then, right? Or you almost say that to them. Well, so you're probably wondering, how do I get new business, right? So I know I'm kind of going down a little rabbit hole here, but again, check out the new Producer Playbook. We have the script of a first meeting in there. Super helpful in talking through high level with a prospect in a first meeting and explaining the insurance game to them and why it makes sense to do things in an alternative way, which is due diligence. So he found that very, very helpful. I think you would as well. Another topic that we had talked about during our call, and our call lasted probably 45 minutes. Just a very good, conversation. Not in person. We're about an hour apart, so you don't need to be local. If you're a manager watching this, or if you're a producer watching this, you can have a mentor, mentee, accountability partner that's an hour away across the country. It doesn't really matter. But another thing that we talked about was some call hangups. So one of the issues is just not getting a decision maker, right? And this happens to all of us at every point in our career. And I think one of the things is he had made 3, 4, 5 calls on someone and wasn't getting anywhere. And I told him just a little tip is after call number 2 or 3, if the gatekeeper says, hey, they're not here, instead of just leaving another message, you can always say something like this. Hey, John, no, before I leave a message, just, I guess maybe I was hoping you could help me out. Can you confirm, is John the best person to talk to that's in charge of the insurance, or is there somebody else there that I should actually be reaching out to? just throwing that in there can help save you a ton of time and help prevent you from pursuing the wrong prospect altogether or the wrong person altogether. And sometimes when you say this, you'll be surprised the person you're talking to is actually, well, actually, I help with that, right? And then now you have maybe a warm introduction there. The other thing that he was getting pushback on, I think this is one of the biggest objections you're going to hear when you're making cold calls, is timing. You're too early, and you're going to hear this especially if you're calling on the timeline that I suggest, which is about 5 months prior to the X date, even 6 months. People are going to think you're crazy, right? Oh, we just renewed. Well, we renewed 6 months ago, and not for another 6 months. But that's exactly why you're calling. So we talked about how to overcome this objection, and I think it's important just to get really good at this one. And so I was pretty happy with one thing he had utilized, and I've heard this before, but the particular prospect was renewing in March, and this was August, he's making calls, and they had set a meeting for September. But what he had said, the guy's like, yeah, I would be open to doing some due diligence, but it's a little too early. And what Ian Cognito said to him was, hey, this might sound crazy, but would you be opposed to a conversation and meeting in September sometime? And the guy's like, yeah, that'd be fine. Scheduled it, right? So the whole this might sound crazy, or that type of language is a really good statement to throw out there that can really help. Another suggestion I made that's helped me a lot with this is kind of an accusation audit style, but if they say, hey, we don't renew till January 1st, call me back, you'd be like, yeah, no problem, I can do that. It sounds to me, John, like maybe you don't ever have any issues with last minute renewals, or you kind of just would rather do the insurance, the last 2-3 weeks prior to the renewal. Is that right? And the reason you're saying that is because most people would say no, right? And that can help you work backwards and get a meeting sooner. The only other thing that we talked about related to this particular pushback is if they say, okay, we renew 1/1, call me 11/1, and it's way too late, and you maybe try some angles, but they're like, no, just too busy, is just set a follow-up for about 3 weeks prior to that, or 4 weeks. And then when you call them, say, hey, I'm calling, you told me to call you back. I'm calling to set the meeting for that first week of November, right? And the last thing I'll say about this is you can, if you have the courage, you can push back and say something like, hey, Steve, since you renew 1/1, you want me to call you back 11/1. It sounds like, or I get the feeling like, maybe you're trying to be nice and you don't really want to meet with me, but you don't want to also tell me no. And if that's the case, no hard feelings, but 11/1's just way too late in the game. So that takes a little more courage, and you got to say it correctly, right, with the right tonality and everything, because you come off as a total, what, if you don't say that correctly, and just you put a bad taste in a prospect's mouth. All right, so some other discussions we had that were really helpful at this point. We talked about setting up a wholesale broker relationship. I don't know how your agency operates. I know there's silos with like marketing and sales agents and service, and people don't want those to cross over. And some agencies are like, hey, we don't want our agents doing any marketing. I just think having knowledge makes you more confident, and doesn't have to just be product knowledge. It also could be market knowledge. But one of the things that's helped me most in my career was establishing a really good relationship with a wholesale broker. They see such a high volume of business, especially if you're in a state where there's more wholesale placement. If you all standard, then develop this relationship with maybe an underwriter or two that your agency has a really good rapport with. But I told this guy, I said, hey, you got to meet my wholesaler. So we set up a meeting. I said, he can just be a great resource for you. If you're calling on this type of contractor, you make a call, and he always picks up his phone, or if not, he gets back to you super quick, but he can be very insightful in terms of just what risks they're facing, what the markets are, what the rates are, and it can make you look more informative and feel more confident when you're talking with the prospects. So that's something I would highly, highly recommend. Another thing we talked about was networking groups. And I told, Ian, I said, hey man, I haven't really done any networking for, 12 years. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do any, or that's good. I personally would like to get involved in one group and do like a monthly luncheon type situation. I still got to do it. I just keep putting it off. But I told him, I said, it's not going to get you validated, right? Don't feel the pressure to go to networking stuff. Or if you do, reach out to people maybe on LinkedIn, like CPAs, bankers, and just do one-off lunches. But you can control your schedule. If the calling's working for you, don't let people pressure you into thinking you got to do this networking. I think sometimes in the insurance industry, everyone feels like, oh man, I gotta be networking, gotta join groups, gotta do all this stuff, gotta meet a ton of people. You're not selling personal homeowners insurance or life insurance. It might be a little different then, but for commercial insurance mid-market, you're not, networking can certainly work. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying don't be pressured into doing a ton of it if you like to cold call more. And I would personally recommend cold calling. So the last thing that we really talked about over this call together was I just asked, hey, how are you doing mentally and emotionally, man? Week number 3. And I think it's an important question, right? Because however you're doing in that regards is going to impact everything else. And so we had a good conversation, and it was funny. Ian was like, it's kind of funny. I had a little bit of an imposter syndrome, like, calling on these larger accounts and questioning, am I good enough? And we just talked about, ways to overcome that. And hey, that affects everybody, right? Me and every other agent out there can get a bit of imposter syndrome, so don't let that hold you back. So anyways, it was a really good chat, and I think he found it helpful. And then, at the end of the call, we just talked about this week, what to expect. And it's the same thing as the first 2-3 weeks, which is the 200 call goal. Just stay out there, stay active, ask me questions. I'm always available. I think this is just, if you're watching this and you work at an agency or hiring producers, I think getting them on a fast start is really, really critical. And hopefully this series, Diary of a New Producer, will help you show that you can get them on a fast start. So in 2 weeks, really, this is the beginning of week 3, but in 2.5 weeks of calling, 4 meetings set up, and I think he has 1 deal in the hopper potentially. So yeah, that's awesome. There's no reason you need to have a slow start in this game. So that's it for week number 3. Stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. Every week we're going to be coming out with a new video to kind of give you a look behind the curtain to show you what's going on with this series. But we really appreciate your support. If you or your sales team haven't checked out the New Producer Playbook, check us out there. Follow us on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and just appreciate all your support. Good luck.